Hey, what's up, NBA fan? What's up, all sports fan? This is JB right here, host of the Behind the Bench podcast network and channel. Just want to give a shout out to the rest of the crew, Shy, Kelvin, and Jermaine. And for everyone who's watching this video, I hope that you support Behind the Bench and subscribe to the network and help make this podcast the best that it can be. Now check this out. Check this out. Look, there used to be what they call an old saying. If it ain't broke, don't go trying to fix it. Well, apparently, when it comes to the NBA right now, they're trying to fix aspects of the game that wasn't broken to begin with. The NBA started back in 1946. And it seemed like to me the difference between the executives or the presidents, or let's just say the commissioner of the NBA during that time, it seemed like whatever decisions that they made, perfect example, there used to always be an 82 game season. By the time the 60s hit, the 1960s arrived, the games increased from, let's say, like 76 games to 78 games and to 80 games. And then eventually, by the mid 60s, like the 1964, 1965, they increased the schedule to 82 games. And from the 60s to the 70s, from the 70s to the 80s, from the 80s to the 90s, from the 90s to the 2000s, you didn't hear any complaints about this schedule. If anything, players saw it as a badge of honor to be able to play all 82 games. It was a badge of honor. You know what I mean? Like as they say, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. But ironically, they played the season more like it was a sprint than an actual marathon. Now, I know I may be getting off tangent, but I'm trying to set the stage for how the NBA, to me, is being manipulated in a lot of ways that don't really need extra direction or all these suggestions and ideas, when really the game should always be the impetus for whatever direction that follows. It should always be predicated by the players and always should be predicated by the game. So what I'm trying to say is, perfect example, the All-Star game. Traditionally, it was the Eastern Conference versus the Western Conference All-Stars, the greatest 24 players in the world, right? The fans vote for the starters, then the coaches would select the reserves, right? So that tradition stood for like 40 years. Then you make this change to team this guy, team that guy. Then it all collapsed during this All-Star game this year, where you heard nothing but complaint after complaint after complaint after complaint after complaint from fans, sports personalities, and the like, advertisers. So what did the league finally do? Well, they plan on returning the All-Star game back to its original and real format, which they never should have tinkered with to begin with. And that leads me to, I always like to set up a backdrop before I introduce the topic of discussion, the topic of choice. And it's this mid-season, this in-season tournament that's supposed to be introduced to the NBA this coming season, 23-24 campaign, inaugural mid-season tournament. But what's crazy about it is it's so confusing. What's the purpose of it? What is the league trying to achieve or aspire to do? See, there is no benefit if they can't explain what the benefit is. They coming up with all these structures like, well, in this pool, these teams gonna play these teams and blase, and when you get to point A to point B, it sounds like a maze. It's so confusing. I don't even think they know what the true purpose of it is. I think the players will complain about it down the line. I believe there will be a backlash. See, to me, it's like they're trying to come up with extra incentives to get players to compete at a high level for all 82 games. Well, the more you try to provide these superficial means for players to rise to the occasion, then I believe you will not achieve the ultimate goal that you're looking for, because you're not letting the game be played naturally. What I'm trying to say, when you had the real All-Star game format, there was pride in it. The East wanted to beat the West wanted to beat the East. It was natural pride. That alone elevated the excitement to compete. The 24 best players in the world going at it, representing their respective conference and their respective teams. This right here, it doesn't seem like it has there's really no incentive for the players to participate in this and try to convince themselves that it's equivalent to a playoff game or the honor of representing your team and conference in an all-star game. It's fluid to me at this point. And I believe what's going to happen, they'll try it for there may be an initial curiosity about it. But once we see the unnecessary motivation to stage this so-called event, I believe within 2 years, it will be removed from the NBA landscape. And it'd be looked at as no more than a blip in the road. And it reminds me of what the NBA did back in the mid 2000s when they replaced the leather basketball, which has been the standard type of basketball that we've all used to play the game, from kids at the playground, high school, college, pros, men's game, women's game. You know what I mean? Like the game was founded when it really got established as far as the sport of basketball. Well, what led to a leather basketball, that's the best natural element to use to play the sport and to create a basketball. And they switched from the leather basketball to polyurethane basketball. And within months, players complained about it. They couldn't hold the ball. It was sliding in their hands. And they scrapped it by midseason. There was no reason for it. And I believe that's going to be the same result with this midseason tournament. There's no reason to have it. In-season tournament, whatever you want to call it. And it's taking place towards the beginning of the season, where players should be motivated to start the season off as strong as possible anyway. You don't need no. And then it's a tournament. It's built as a tournament. This is professional basketball. This is the NBA. There should be nothing associated with the National Basketball Association pertaining to a tournament. It marginalizes the league. This is the cream of the crop. They need to start approaching it as such and let the game speak for itself. So that's my take on it, the midseason tournament. I'll be talking more about it down the line when this thing kick off. But this has been JB right here. And until next time, this has been Behind the Bench.